Welcome to Whole Bible Study with your host, me, Tad Inoue. Up to this point in the book of Numbers, the biblical story has moved from dramatic liberation into something far more difficult and far more honest. The slow, fragile work of transformation. Israel has been freed from slavery in Egypt, from an empire built on forced labor, violence, and control. But Numbers refuses to romanticize freedom. It shows us with uncomfortable clarity that liberation is an event, while the healing process is a process. A people can be physically free and still enslaved in the mind. Generations of oppression shape how people think, remember, and imagine what is possible. Fear does not disappear simply because chains are removed. Even belief itself can fracture under pressure. And as Israel's journeys through the wilderness, the text records repeated cycles of anxiety, complaint, and mistrust. The people worry about food, water, leadership, and safety. They look backward more easily than forward. Even after witnessing extraordinary events, the defeat of Egypt, the crossing of the sea, ongoing provision in the desert, they struggle with disbelief. Numbers does not present this as cartoonish rebellion. It presents it as the psychological aftermath of trauma. The wilderness becomes not only a physical landscape, but an internal one, where memory and fear shape perception. This tension reaches a breaking point when scouts are sent to explore the land ahead. Their report produces communal panic. Faced with uncertainty, the people retreat into old survival instincts. Instead of imagining a future different from their past, they assume catastrophe. As a result, that generation is told that it will no longer enter the land. At this point in the story, a devastating question emerges. If a community has failed this deeply, how does it continue at all? Numbers 15 enters directly into this unresolved moment. It does not offer emotional reassurance. It does not erase consequences. Instead, it asks a practical, communal, and deeply human question. How does a community deal with unintentional sin and deliberate defiance? This is not abstract theology. This is about survival. The chapter opens with an assumption that might surprise us. God speaks to Moses and refers to a future moment saying, quote, when you come into the land that I am giving you, unquote. In Hebrew, the phrase is ki tavo el haaretz. The future is still spoken as real. Despite failure, despite judgment, the story is not over. This alone begins to answer our central question. A community dealing with collapse must not lose its sense of continuity. Law and ritual here are not instruments of control. They are anchors against despair. The instructions that follow focus on offerings that accompany daily life, grain offerings and drink offerings brought alongside larger sacrifices. These are not emergency trials reserved for crisis. They are routine practices meant to structure ordinary existence. Scholars have long noted that these offerings are relational rather than appeasing. They normalize repair. From a sociological perspective, this is crucial. Communities that survive long-term do not rely on moments of outrage or punishment to maintain cohesion. They embed accountability and restoration into everyday rhythms. The chapter then draws a careful distinction that stands at the heart of its message. It speaks first about unintentional sin, using the Hebrew word bishgaga. This term does not mean ignorance in the sense of never having heard the law. It refers to error arising from human limitation, misjudgment, distraction, incomplete awareness. In a tightly interconnected society, such failures still cause harm. The text does not deny that, but it also refuses to label them as rebellion. For unintentional sin, the text provides a path towards repair and forgiveness, both for the individuals and for the community as a whole. Responsibility remains, but condemnation does not dominate. Psychologically, this is an acknowledgement of reality. Human beings fail not because they resist goodness, but because they are finite, forgetful, and easily overwhelmed. A community that cannot distinguish between limitation and defiance becomes cruel. A community that refuses to address harm becomes unstable. Numbers 15 insists that both accountability and mercy are necessary. Then the tone changes sharply. The text introduces actions done b'yahud rahmah, literally, quote, with a raised hand, unquote. In the ancient world, this phrase signaled open defiance, not private failure. It carried political weight. A raised hand was the posture of challenge, resistance, even revolt. Here, the issue is not that harm occurred, but that belonging itself is being rejected. The person acts publicly, knowingly, and in opposition to the covenant that holds the community together. The consequences for such defiance is described as karet, being cut off. Scholars debate exactly what this entails: social expulsion, loss of lineage, premature death, but its function is clear. It marks the boundary beyond which communal life cannot be sustained. Every society, ancient or modern, must decide how it responds to acts that threaten its existence. Numbers 15 does not pretend this is an easy or safe. Immediately following this legal distinction, the chapter presents a brief narrative. A man is found gathering sticks on the Sabbath. The text offers almost no psychological detail. We are not told why he does this. We are not told where he intends defiance, or whether he intends defiance or survival. This silence is deliberate. The community does not act immediately. The man is held while clarification is sought. Even here, process matters. Judgment is not rushed. The outcome is severe, and later Jewish tradition wrestled deeply with this story. Some interpretations suggest the man acted deliberately to test the law. Others argue that the punishment reflects the fragile and formative stage of covenant rather than the timeless rule. There is no single authoritative explanation. What remains consistent is discomfort. That discomfort itself is instructive. It signals awareness of the dangers involved when power, fear, and moral certainty collide. Anthropologically, this episode reflects a community under intense stress. After the failure of the spies, trust is low, anxiety is high, boundaries feel threatened. In such moments, societies often tighten control. Numbers do not hide this dynamic. It records it. Without smoothing at the edges, the chapter ends not with punishment, but with prevention. The commandment of tzitzit, the tassels worn on garments, is introduced as a physical reminder of the commandments. The text explicitly states their purpose: to help the people remember, so that they do not follow only impulse or desire. This is a profound shift. The response to unintentional sin is not fear, but memory. The text assumes forgetfulness. It assumes distraction, and instead of denying that reality, it works with it. Psychologically, this externalizes moral awareness. Responsibility is not left entirely to inner willpower. Sociologically, values are made visible in daily life. Theologically, holiness becomes practiced rather than abstract. The goal is not perfection, but alignment. So how does a community deal with unintentional sin and deliberate defiance? Well, Numbers 15 offers an ancient, imperfect, but serious answer. It distinguishes carefully. It refuses to flatten all failure into rebellion. It refuses to ignore facts that threaten communal survival. And it embeds repair into normal, ordinary life. And it acknowledges, without resolving, the risks involved in judging intention. What it does not give us is certainty. Intention remains difficult to measure. Justice remains vulnerable to fear. Power remains dangerous when unchecked. The text does not prevent otherwise. The text does not pretend otherwise. It invites wrestling, not easy conclusions. Numbers 15 is not about creating a flawless people. It's about helping a wounded community survive in the wilderness, externally and internally. It challenges us to think about how we respond to failure, how we protect one another, and how we leave room for growth without surrendering the bonds that hold us together. Well, thank you for walking through this chapter with me. If this study speaks to you, consider supporting Mustard Seed Ministries through Patreon. Your support helps make these documentaries and podcasts possible. Please share this with a friend, leave a note, and keep the conversation going. And we'll see you in the next chapter soon.